On today's show, we'll be joined by weekly co-host Alykhan Bijani to discuss the latest in the KJ Martin and Eric Gordon trade rumor saga. Is KJ Martin still unhappy that he doesn't have a bigger role here in Houston? And how much of a mistake would it be to not give a bigger role to KJ Martin because Eric Gordon is still starting at the 3 spot? Also, we take a look at just how impressive the Houston Rockets defense has been late in games this season, spearheaded by none other than Jabari Smith Jr. All of that and more today on Locked On Rockets.
This is Mission Control, Houston.
Ignition sequence start.
The Houston Rockets select Jalen Green and Jabari Smith Jr.
T-minus 15 seconds. Guidance is internal.
Every time I step on that floor, I'm coming.
You're getting somebody who's going to come in with a chip on their shoulder, somebody who's going to come in and compete from day one.
6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
What's up, and welcome to another edition of Locked On Rockets, your daily podcast home for everything Houston Rockets basketball. As always, I'm your host, Jackson Gatlin, native Houstonian and credentialed media member. I'm also the host of Locked On NBA Mondays, host of the State of the Rockets podcast, as well as Rockets Watch. Be sure to follow along on Twitter at JT Gatlin, and the show, of course, at Locked On Rockets, free and available wherever you get your podcasts, including YouTube, where you can help the show out tremendously by commenting anything below. Joining us now is your weekly co-host, Alykhan Bijani. You can follow on Twitter at Rockets_insider. And just a couple days after the Shams Charania report about the Rockets' potential 3-team deal involving the Phoenix Suns and the Milwaukee Bucks and the rumors surrounding Eric Gordon and KJ Martin and their potential futures in Houston, we have another report coming out from Eric Pincus of Bleacher Report discussing KJ Martin and
another one.
Just I need a DJ Khaled drop on the soundboard and just we'll fire
another one.
There we go. Yeah, that'll do for now. But let's take a look at what Eric Pincus had to say about KJ Martin and his role here in Houston. Per Eric Pincus of Bleacher Report, forward KJ Martin has also hoped to be moved to a team that can give him a more significant role. His minutes have climbed in Houston this season, but multiple sources believe he still wants out. This is also in conjunction with the fact that the Rockets have been actively shopping Eric Gordon for a couple seasons looking for a first-round pick. Pincus goes on to say both players have favorable contracts. Eric Gordon, basically effectively an expiring deal. Next year is a non-guaranteed $21 million contract. And then KJ Martin has a team option at the end of the season as well. So, Alykhan, let's start at the top here before we maybe backtrack a little bit and also go back to the Shams report looking at KJ. But I feel so what role would KJ suddenly have on a team like the Suns that isn't going to be equivalent to the role that he has here in Houston? I feel like he's getting enough minutes in Houston, and I feel like this reporting may be a little off base here.
100% respect Eric, and so if Eric is putting out something out there, he's well respected. He's been in the business for a long time, so it's something that opens your eyes a little bit, right? But I have to look at it from the perspective of what is going on right now with this Rockets team that could lead you to believe that KJ is unhappy. Let's look at the numbers, Jackson, shall we? The last 4 games, the Rockets are 3-1. The most minutes KJ, or the highest number of minutes KJ's played in those 4 games is 21 minutes, almost 22 minutes in a win against Milwaukee on December 11th. Before that, he was playing up to 28, 30 minutes a night. And he was starting some of those games too, right? Against Golden State, when he started for Eric, when Eric was resting, he had 28 minutes in that loss to Golden State. But he played pretty well, 5 of 11. 0 of 3 from 3, but 5 of 8 inside the 3-point line. He had 7 rebounds. I mean, he is somebody who ideally gives you a jolt. He's been playing well as a starter, giving you plus minutes. But it comes down to can you make him your full-time starter? Is he somebody who's going to shoot well enough right now? We can talk about moving without the basketball. You and I have talked about it extensively. I'm very high on him in terms of his cutting ability, what he does when you play him next to Sengun, how he can complement Jabari Smith extremely well, how his screen and roll ability, how he's one of the best screeners on the team. I mean, I can go on and on. But it's going to come down to in that starting unit, can you shoot the basketball? That three has to be able to shoot the ball, right? Because they're doing a pretty good job of rebounding overall. Let me give you his shooting numbers. Over the past 15 games, he's only hit 7 threes. And he's shooting 25%. The first 12 games of the season, he hit 16 threes on almost 37% from three-point line. So his three-point shooting has gone down. Okay? He's shooting 54% from the floor. Much better when he's around the rim. He's 13th in the NBA in dunks. He's much better in the paint. Is he going to get those same paint opportunities if he's playing with the starting unit, where teams are playing off of him? He's having to cut. He's having to do all these things. Now, film shows me that he can do it, and that he'll get those movements, he'll get those cuts, and he'll be able to score inside. But to allow Jalen to flourish, to allow Alp to flourish, to allow Jabari to flourish. My question to you is it better to have him as a starter, or is it better to have Eric Gordon or another shooter as a starter?
We've had this. I feel like we've had this conversation so many times this season. About the 3 spot and what those guys bring to the table. And I do agree, the shooting has taken a concerning dip for KJ. Right, there was a while there where it looked like, oh, hey, KJ's actually got 36, 37%.
Is good. That's really good. Yeah.
But he's down to 32% for the season, as you said. Sub 30%. What is 25% over the last 10, 15 games? So I don't necessarily think that. I think KJ is a better shooter than his numbers would suggest at this point.
Agree.
And I do think that he gives that jolt that you talk about him giving. I think that is a much needed thing that this starting lineup is in desperate need of, right? Is just having just a facelift, a change, whatever you want to call it, because Eric is good at the things that he's good at. And he provides this team, he gives them spacing, he gives them a lot of bailout opportunities, but this team is basically running 3 shooting guards in the starting lineup, Alykhan. Like that, they're all so duplicative of one another. They're all bucket getters. They're all guys who can, attack off a closeout and who can, shoot the ball. They can generate their own offense. They can semi-create offense for other guys at times. But I feel like when you plug KJ into that starting lineup, one, you get bigger, you add more size, you add more defensive versatility, maybe. Eric is a good defender when he wants to be and when he's locked in. But how many times, Alykhan, this season have you seen Eric actually be locked in defensively, right? Like, it hasn't looked great for much of this season. And I think now it's kind of at a point where even offensively, Eric doesn't give you much more than he's going to space the floor. He's going to, be all the way out 25, 26 feet away from the rim. He's going to give you opportunities where he'll bail you out at the end of the clock. But KJ gives you another connector piece offensively, right? We've talked about Kelly Iko had the fantastic article for The Athletic talking about KJ as a connector offensively and as a connector defensively. And that's something that KJ gives you that I don't think Eric gives you at this point.
Where the numbers don't show. And I'll give you another example, Jackson, of that. Eric Gordon's a plus 36 during this current 5-game home winning streak. Plus 36. So that would lead to me believe that you should be playing him as a starter, right? He's attempted 10 plus field goal percentages in a season high 4 straight games. He's shooting 38%, 38.7% from the field, 30% from 3 over the last 7 games. So he is struggling shooting the ball too. Now, that goes back to it. Which numbers do you believe? Do you believe the plus 36 here, or do you believe KJ, even though he's not doing as well in the plus 36, the plus or minus department, can he allow you to be successful as that starter? Personally, I've tweeted this out there. KJ is a starter to me. He should be playing starter minutes. And it also comes back to it, Eric Gordon. Do you bring him off the bench? I don't think he's going to come off the bench. I don't think he wants to come off the bench. I think he's a starter. That's what he is in this league, unless he goes to a different team. And it goes back to our conversation that Shams reported a few days ago. Is it time to move on from Eric Gordon?
And at that point, I mean, what does that even look like if you're the Houston Rockets, the ability to try and move on from Eric Gordon? Or, again, this could be this is a crossroads maybe for the organization, because if you have a player who is unhappy in KJ Martin, which we're going to talk about kind of some of the reporting there. And I think maybe some of that might be lingering after effects from some of the reporting from this past offseason. But if KJ is unhappy with his role and you are not giving him a bigger role because of the veteran in front of him in the lineup, how do you resolve that predicament? We're going to talk about that. But first, today's episode is brought to you by ExpressVPN. ExpressVPN helps protect your privacy and security online, but here's something you might not know. You can also use ExpressVPN to unlock movies and shows that are only available in other countries. Maybe you've run out of stuff to watch on Netflix. This will absolutely change your world. ExpressVPN allows you to binge watch whatever you want from another country's Netflix library. Just fire up ExpressVPN, change the location to the UK or whatever other country you want to, refresh Netflix, and that's it. ExpressVPN lets you control where you want sites to think that you're located. You can choose from almost 100 different countries. So just imagine all the different Netflix libraries that you can go through. So if you want to get access to hundreds of new shows, go to expressvpn.com/lockedon right now, and you can get an extra 3 months of ExpressVPN for free. That's expressvpn.com/lockedon, expressvpn.com/lockedon to learn more. Today's episode is also brought to you by NHTSA. Look, you're hanging out with some friends, putting back a few drinks. We've all been there, right? A few becomes a few too many. As the evening comes to an end and people start to head out, you're thinking of calling for a ride, but then you realize, you live nearby. You can make it home okay. It's no big deal. What are the odds you'll get pulled over anyways, right? And even so, what's the worst that could happen, right? Maybe your insurance goes up, you lose your license, lose your job, maybe total your car, maybe you kill someone. Look, everyone knows about the risks of driving drunk. So if you think you're okay to drive after a few drinks, think again. Play it safe and plan ahead to get a ride. It only takes one mistake to change your life or someone else's life forever. Drive sober or get pulled over. And continuing on here at Locked On Rockets, your daily podcast home for everything Houston Rockets basketball. Now, we kind of hashed out there in the first segment some of the potential pros, cons to, starting Eric versus starting KJ. And this has been an ongoing debate, for the pretty much feels like the entire season for Rockets fans. Alykhan, I'm at a point, though, where, especially looking at this report, right? And I wonder, I do agree, right? Eric Pincus has been, in NBA circles. He's got sources. He's a credible reporter. I don't think he's reporting on something that is untrue. But at the same time, we can go back to like the offseason, and we know that like a big part of like the unhappiness in KJ Martin's role was like Kenyon Martin Sr., like being unhappy with his son's role for the Rockets, right? Like he wants the best possible role for his son moving forward. Of course, he would want his son to be like a starter and have, big minutes and all this. So I look at that though and think, if you're the Houston Rockets and you've got a player of KJ's caliber who has shown the production that he has, but you are potentially on the risk of like upsetting him, or he wants a different situation, whatever, because you are holding on to a guy in Eric Gordon. I just wonder at what point has Eric Gordon served his purpose, is where I'm getting at with this organization, right? Because now you're starting to look at some of the negative side effects of keeping a guy like EG, who at this point may not even be able to fetch you a first rounder. I think the Rockets would be just super lucky if they got a first on the table for Eric Gordon at this point. You take that first and you run, and you're just done. You're gone. But how do you view this as detrimental at all, or do you think that KJ is maybe, like, depending on this reporting, I mean, is he overstepping his bounds as like a third-year player to want a bigger role at this point?
First of all, to channel my inner Eric Gordon on 2K and in real life, Jackson, you did a great job tonight. Offensive and defensive end, you did a terrific job.
Oh my, someone called the National Weather Service. We had an unanticipated storm in the building tonight.
It's my Eric 2K drop.
Oh my goodness. Let me tell you, Eric got some good skills, man. He got some good voiceover skills. But to answer your question, I get why Eric is starting. From a schematic perspective, I 100% get it. I get it from a off the court perspective, 100% get it. But when you're molding a team and you're going into an offseason where you're potentially going to have a top. I mean, we don't know where the Rockets are going to finish. Maybe they keep winning games. Maybe they don't. But between a top 1 to 7 to 8 draft pick, right? If that's going to happen, you're adding somebody else to your young core who's going to need additional playing time. You may have a second additional first-round pick. Where are those minutes going to go? I think it's time to start figuring out, especially for your third-year guys, what you have in them before you make the move. Let KJ start. See how he does next to Jabari and Alperen and Sengun if LP is your starting center. If he's not, put Jabari at the 5 because he's been playing much better in drop coverage and as a 5. Put KJ at the 4 because KJ plays better when he's at the 4. And maybe put Jae'Sean when he comes back at the 3. I mean, that's probably not the best for spacing, but do things where you're giving others a chance to be successful.
Do you really just suggest a lineup with like negative spacing value? What are you doing? Who are you and what have you done with Alykhan?
No. You know, the whole thing about the Rockets needing a point guard is very interesting because Eric Gordon is not a point guard. And if he's not going to help you run your offense effectively and get it in order, right? Personally, I think Eric Gordon does a lot of for you, right? Like I said, schematically and all these different things. But if he's not going to help you get everything set up and doing all these things.
No, but there's moments where Eric does like run like a good pick and roll, or Eric makes the right read, like against the Suns.
With the bench, right? But what I'm saying with the starting unit, like, look,
that's fair. Yeah,
we talked about the numbers on last week's show. Eric and LP run a fantastic dribble handoff game together. It's one of the best points per possession, team points per possession on the team, right? We talked about that last week. So I'm not knocking Eric here. What I'm saying is I think it's important to understand what you have with KJ in the starting lineup because you see what he's doing off the bench. You see how he's playing well with some of those starters. I think his chemistry with Jalen Green is fantastic because what Jalen does, Jalen likes to go downhill. KJ likes to also go downhill. So teams are kind of in a little bind. Do we hedge or do we play drop? What do we do with Jalen? You know, do we force him to his weak hand? All that's going on. They're trying to focus on Jalen. KJ's so good at facing his back towards the ball handler and putting his face towards the basket and literally going north to south off a screen, north to south. So it's really easy for a ball handler to be able to guide the ball to him and for him to be able to go up for a dunk, which he's one of the league leaders in. So it just makes a lot of sense for me, for him, especially as a screener, when you're not using Jabari as a screener already. You're using Alpi as more of a connector. Use KJ as a connector too, but use him as a screener. Kind of go back into that offense where you're running a side to side. If you have a 3 who's able to do that and do those things, I think it's really important for you. And I think it's worth a shot for you to be able to explore and see what happens.
And it just kind of comes down to the fact that, Eric is not a long-term fixture of this organization, right? I apologize. He has been a long-term fixture of this organization. He is not a future fixture of this organization, right? Eric is not going to be here 3-4 years from now as a starter, as a an integral piece of whatever the Rockets are trying to currently build up right now. And I do understand, and per Eric Pincus in the article, right, basically the line that offers a little bit of reassurance is the Rockets won't make a deal that they don't like. But I think that's partially some of my concern is that they've been so potentially kind of picky on a deal for Eric Gordon up to this point that ship may have sailed on being able to secure a first-round draft pick for EG, and then that is directly kind of, holding you hostage as far as the way that you distribute minutes across the season, right? Like it would be, Alykhan, what would they even be doing right now if Jae'Sean Tate was healthy and active? Like what would the rotations even look like? Would they be running a 12, 13-man rotation with all the wings on the roster getting 15 minutes a night, if that? So it's just gotten to a point where you've got to start kind of consolidating your assets and figuring out what you have. But as far as assets go, I would hate to see KJ Martin be the guy that gets moved on from, given the production that we've seen, given what we've seen out of him in the flashes where he has been a starter, or even just his production off the bench. It doesn't make sense to have him be the guy that you move on from because there's not enough space for him.
Look, I'm not saying KJ Martin is a superstar. I'm not saying he's a star. I'm not saying he's like a bona fide premier starter in this league. What I think, he's a good role player and he fits well with the young guys you're trying to develop with. And it's worth giving him a shot to see what he does. I think a good comparison, and this may be blown out of proportion by people in the YouTube comments or Twitter or any social media when they hear this. I like to think of KJ Martin as Dwight Powell for the Mavericks. He can kind of morph into that role. Dwight Powell is a guy who just plays his role and has played his role well with the superstar that's there, has played his role when the superstar is not there. Just he plays his role. He knows what he's doing. He can be that connector off the bench. As a starter, you can plug him in and he can be successful either or. I think it'd be great if KJ Martin develops into that, because I think you need that kind of big. That what I think of it is like, you know how you have your starting lineup in football, your starting offensive line, you have two tackles, right? Left tackle and a right tackle. Then you have a swing tackle, right? You can plug and chug depending on what's going on. Think you have your 4 and your 5, ideally, right? You have Jabari Smith and you have Alperen Sengun. What if KJ Martin's that guy who can plug in for either or play alongside them when one of them is having an off night? I think if that's your case and that's your trio, then you have Usman Garuba also playing some exceptional minutes off the bench as a 5 defensively. I think it's worth a shot to give those guys a chance at their rotation, right?
No mention of Bruno Fernando, I see.
Lob threat.
Was that Steven Silas?
That was Steven Silas, good friend of the show.
Lob threat.
Alykhan wasn't ready for that one.
KJ Martin's also a lob threat, but
he is.
Lob threat.
I want to hear it one more time.
Lob threat.
No, but I agree with you, right? I think there's a lot of versatility that KJ Martin brings to the table, and it's disappointing, I guess, at this point that this conversation is even having to be had as far as a young, because teams have to make hard decisions, right? Teams that are in the midst of a rebuild have to make hard decisions on young players, right? And sometimes you make the wrong decision, right? How many times have we seen a team move on from a guy and he gets to another organization, another coaching staff, whatever, and he looks fantastic, right? Because he just wasn't given a fair shoot. Bol Bol's doing it right now with the Magic this season, right? Like Bol,
Isaiah Hartenstein.
There you go. Isaiah Hartenstein, another one, right? Guys consistently are, they either don't get a fair shake or they're just in the wrong system or they're not being utilized the right way. And then they go to another organization. They look incredible, right? To your point, I don't think KJ Martin goes to another organization and turns into like an all-star, but he has shown enough that this Rockets organization at this point needs to prioritize opening up those minutes, not only just for KJ, but all the subsequent dominoes that fall thereafter, right? Jae'Sean Tate when he comes back from injury, Tari Eason, who has been incredible and is looks like the steal of the draft, needs those minutes, right? Jabari Smith Jr., who it plays, at the 4 primarily, but can also potentially slot in at the 3, right? And his minutes directly correlate with some of the other guys who play those wing minutes.
How big of a problem is this wing minutes problem, Jackson? There was a game a week or two ago where Tari was playing extremely well. I think he had like 17 points going into the fourth quarter, and he got taken out, and they finished the game without Tari Eason. Now, when Jae'Sean comes back, you're going to have Tari, you're going to have Jae'Sean, you're going to have Jabari, you're going to have KJ, you're going to have Usman, you're going to have Alp. Who closes the game?
Yeah, and who closes the game is a really important question, and trying to figure out what closing lineups actually work for this Rockets team. But on that note of who closes the actual game, that's something that we want to talk about here in the final segment, because one of the positives, especially after my last, I'll be completely like doom and gloom episode after the Suns win, one of the positives for this young Rockets team is they've actually been really good in the clutch this season, closing out games, and that is a great sign for a young group of guys. So we're going to talk about how the Rockets have closed out games. We're going to take a look back at that really big time win against the Milwaukee Bucks, some of the play from Jabari Smith Jr. in that game. But first, a quick message from our friends over at Built Bar. When it comes to protein bars, you've got to check out Built Bar. They are the #1 protein bar on the market. And guess what? They've got so many new reimagined flavors heading into the holiday season. They've got cookie dough topper, coconut brownie bar, coconut brownie topper, white chocolate, peppermint granola. Oh, so many incredible flavors to choose from. Every single bar is low cal, low sugar, high protein, high fiber. Amazing if you're trying to cut back a little bit, maybe lose a little bit of weight. Amazing if you're on a keto diet. Every single bar is coated in 100% delicious chocolate. They're not gritty or chalky like other protein bars out there on the market. And right now, you can place an order and get 15% off your order right now by using promo code LOCKEDON15 at Built.com. That's promo code LOCKEDON15 to get 15% off at Built.com. And final segment here at Locked On Rockets, your daily podcast home for everything Houston Rockets basketball. Now, Alykhan, we mentioned there at the end of segment 2, closing lineups, right? And closing out games. And that's been bit of a learning experience for this young Rockets team. And this season especially, it feels like they have grown quite a bit in that regard, in actually staying competitive down the stretch of games, really fighting hard. There have been a lot of really close competitive games this season where you really thought, oh, wow, the Rockets were like in that game all the way up until the very end. And, maybe some young mistakes, whatever, and, a couple 50-50 balls don't go their way, what have you. The Rockets this season are actually, they've played 14 games that technically qualify for clutch time minutes.
Okay. It's pretty good.
Across those 14 games, they're actually 500. They're 7-7. So 7 of their 9 wins have qualified for being, and what clutch time minutes refers to, right, is games that are within 5 points in the final 5 minutes of the game.
Wow. Okay.
So that means that the Rockets are actually playing some really competitive basketball down late in these games. And it also means that of their 7 of their 9 wins have been like this close, like, razor thin margin, I should say, down the wire. I can't talk. It's okay. But one of those games that we just experienced, which I think is, arguably the best win of the season for the Rockets, was against the Milwaukee Bucks, where they handled themselves way better than I thought. Like, their composure late in that game was fantastic. And the tone for the entirety of that game was set by none other than Jabari Smith Jr. What did you see out of Jabari that impressed you against the Bucks and against Giannis?
Oh, I'm clapping my hands. I'm rubbing my hands. I'm excited. This is what I was looking forward to all week, Jackson, talking about Jabari Smith. Let me tell you something. I've been very giddy about Jabari Smith Jr. And after that game against Milwaukee, the sky's the limit for this kid. I legitimately think he can win Defensive Player of the Year one day in the future.
With the little Hakeem trophy on the inside. So the Hakeem Olajuwon Defensive Player of the Year trophy.
I love Hakeem. Hakeem is a GOAT to me, especially because, being Muslim and all. That award, by the way, as an aside, a Defensive Player of the Year award, that's a paperweight. That's something I put on top of my paper in my office. Like when I print out synergy stats for the show, and I don't want to lose them when the fan is going around, I put the Hakeem Olajuwon Defensive Player of the Year trophy on top.
Nah, but for real, why did they go into so much detail for the MVP Jordan Award, and then the other ones just look like they're all the exact same with just like the little gold figurines?
I know why.
Inside?
Hey, I know why, Jackson. Because the media, the media hates the Rockets. They hate the Rockets. Okay, there's a reason why the Rockets don't get any credit with the national media. Okay, Jackson. Sorry, man, sarcastic. for those who can't see my face, I'm being very sarcastic. I don't know why they put in a lot more detail, but congratulations to the GOAT himself, Mr. Hakeem Olajuwon, for that award. But back to Jabari, because that's what we're excited to talk about here.
I'm the locksmith.
Milwaukee tried to attack him.
Alykhan's just not ready for all these drops that I have on the soundboard. Now he's like losing it.
Milwaukee tried to attack him by putting him in situations where Giannis could outmuscle him. Okay. So what does that mean? Okay. You can't form a wall when Giannis is in the post, right? Maybe, you could crowd him a little bit, but you can't really form a wall, right? Because you form a wall in transition. So let's get the ball against Jabari, low left block. Giannis likes that spot. Let's back some Jabari Smith down. Backs him down. Oh, wait. Jabari got it over a 7-foot length. Really hard for Giannis to get some shots off over Jabari. Oh, wait. I'm trying to turn baseline because, Jabari doesn't have that big of a frame just yet. Let me spin baseline. Oh, wait. Jabari steps over because he has his length to help him. Let me get back in transition. I'm going to run past you. Oh, wait. Jabari Smith is actually fast. Look at that. Goes up for a block. Jabari was everywhere. He stayed at the hip of Giannis. He watched the film. He saw the tendencies, and he actually delivered with his play on the court. Technique is really important as a defender in the NBA. And all these Defensive Player of the Year candidates or all NBA team, they could be athletic. But let me be honest with you, most of them have wonderful technique. And Jabari Smith Jr. has great technique, and that's why I'm very high on him, and he displayed that. If you want a good technique performance and you're a nerd and you want to look at biomechanics and technique, go back and watch his performance. Go watch those YouTube highlights against Giannis and look how well he played. Just a terrific overall game from Jabari against Giannis. And, I'm not just excited about the individual defense, Jackson. You noticed it too. We talked about this. He played well as a 5. Now, he wasn't the 5 per se on the floor. There was another big with him, but the Bucks went to a lot of pick and roll, either where Jabari was defending Giannis as a screener or a ball handler, and he was essentially that 5 in that setup, right, defending the screen. And he did a wonderful job, especially on drop coverage. And I just wanted to ask you, what are your thoughts about what you saw from him? Not in isolation, which is what we're all marveling at, but what he was doing with the team defense in pick and roll.
I thought he did a good job, especially like when navigating the pick and rolls, right? Kind of like hedging when he needed to, but also being able to kind of fight back and be kind of in the passing lanes a little bit. We saw him blow up some possessions that way. His timing was really, really great. And even like his ability to identify, right, in some of those key moments, like, okay, you know, there was a moment like late in the game where they switched on a pick and roll and Jabari had to pick up like Grayson Allen, right? So he's not actually, at that point, he's not defending Giannis anymore on that pick and roll. But what he did is it was the play where the Rockets blew up the play and KPJ actually was the one who wound up tipping the pass away from Giannis. But Jabari made that lob so difficult for Grayson Allen with his length, right? Knowing that, okay, I'm switched on to Grayson Allen now. So in order to prevent like an easy lob over the top for Giannis, right, I need to make this pass as difficult as possible. So Jabari just had his length draped all over Grayson Allen. I thought he did a good job there. And then he also, like, by extension, the team did a good job. Like, I felt like they gave him the help when he needed it, communicating, calling stuff out in pick and roll, understanding where guys are going to be. I thought it was a good team effort spearheaded by spearheaded by Jabari on Giannis specifically.
There's one possession, or it was multiple possessions. It was a chain of possessions. I highlighted this on Twitter as probably the best sequence of the Rockets season so far, right? Jalen hits the 3. Jabari's back in drop coverage, gets the steal, brings it up, lob, goes to KPJ, comes back. Jabari gets the block. Alp loses it. Jabari gets it, tosses it up. Another dunk for KPJ. Best sequence, right? But those plays are what excite me by Jabari. Okay. Drop coverage, you're attacking him. Empty corner. What does empty corner mean for a defender? I'm in no man's land. Who am I going to help on? Not only did he lunge at the ball handler, he lunged back to the roll man and poked the ball away. That is a Draymond move. But why is Jabari so good at it? Because he has long hands, long arms, and he's able to poke and get low. He got so low to be able to get in that pass lane and poke that away. That was very impressive. Then he comes back. Next possession in transition, right? He's celebrating. He's happy about the dunk. Comes back. Giannis trying to attack, take advantage of a young team, not playing transition defense. Blocks him, right? Brings the ball back up. That was awesome.
That block was a statement block. Like Giannis was very clearly trying to kind of, cut down the momentum, calm things down, shut up Toyota Center, all that. And fed directly into Jabari, and Jabari was like, nah, we're not having any of that, right? Like that's where you start getting those glimpses for sure, right? We've been talking about this all the way since back during Summer League, Alykhan, right? Is I had the belief that Jabari would be a plus NBA caliber defender and he would translate defensively right away. And then we saw Summer League and we saw him play at the 5 in Summer League, right? And that was where my perception changed completely of him, where no, I think this guy can be your defensive anchor one day. Like this guy can be a DPOY type guy.
You and I have been on this since day one. 100%.
There we go. We're running the victory lap right now about Jabari Smith Jr. shutting down Giannis.
No, I just want our listeners to really go back and watch that clip and watch how he plays. When you're playing an empty corner, it's hard for a 5. It's really hard because you have to do multiple things. You have to account for multiple things at once. And he did a great job. Look, man, I'm very bullish on Jabari Smith Jr. I think the sky's the limit for this kid. And he's only 19 years old. Let him add his frame. Let him add muscle. It's going to take him a few years. It's not going to happen after one season. It's going to take a few years. He has to not only grow in muscle, he has to grow with his frame. He has to get wider as much as he gets bigger. And if that's the case, and he can do these things he's doing now with his size and his length, man, wow. I don't know what else to say, man.
I don't think I've ever seen Alykhan this geeked about a player before. This is hilarious. This is newfound territory here at LOR.
Yeah. Jalen also played well.
What a cop out. Jalen also played well. It was great. I had people canvassing for the fact that, like, for the Locked On Rockets player of the game, people wanted to split it in half and give half to Jabari for the defense and half to Jalen for the offense.
Somebody called me a Jalen Green hater a few weeks ago. And I'm just going to say, man, I am not a Jalen Green hater, Jackson.
Alykhan Bijani, noted Jalen Green hater. That's how I'm introducing you on the very next podcast.
I am not a Jalen Green hater. More than anything.
All right. Look, we've gone more than long enough on today's episode. Alykhan, noted Jalen Green hater. You know the drill. Let everybody know where to track you down. Is your handle at I hate Jalen Green on Twitter?
You can follow me on Twitter at Rockets_insider. Follow us on Twitter as well, Locked On Rockets. On Instagram, follow us on Instagram at Locked On Rockets. We'll talk to you guys next week.
And that's going to do it for another edition of Locked On Rockets. As always, thank you so much for checking out the show. If you haven't done so yet, please consider subscribing wherever you listen to your podcast. That's Apple, Spotify, Google, the Odyssey app, free and available on all podcast platforms. We're also available on YouTube. Just go to YouTube, search Locked On Rockets. Be sure to like, comment, and subscribe. But as always, thank you so much for watching. Thank you so much for listening. And we look forward to having you back right here at Locked On Rockets, your daily podcast home for everything Houston Rockets basketball.